I'd like to now move us towards like some of the main topics that we want to discuss that have happened recently. So, of course, one major one is the acquisition, I guess, merger or acquisition of
Mhm.
the Hermes network. And I guess like this kind of like was quite an interesting bit of news because in the
Mhm.
past it's always been kind of like quite organic type of growth, right? Where
Mhm.
integrations and like you said, like subtraction. This seems like an addition. You're purchasing like a whole tech and the whole team coming in
Mhm.
and at the 250 million Matic budget, right? So what is the story behind this M&A, right? How did it come to be, and then how do you guys make the decision there?
So the story of this goes, or at least the genesis of the idea goes all the way back to I think November of last year, about November, December, when we were kind of trying to understand like what is the future of scaling, right? So this was the same time when we were rebranding ourselves from Matic to Polygon, and we were discussing that we want to be an aggregator for all the different types of technologies, right? And it's great, but the question is how, like how do you do something like this? So this is kind of when we looked at all the different technologies out there, whether it's zk rollups, optimistic rollups, and when we sort of did that deep dive and that analysis, we kind of realized that, like, if you were to talk about true scalability, like true unfettered scalability with, let's say, 1 second transactions and privacy natively enabled, like the best case scenario, which is possible from a blockchain perspective. Like, I think one of the answers we found, or what we even now feel, is that stateless zk clients, right, zk enabled clients could potentially sort of solve for that. Right. So you need to have zero knowledge, a technology, so which gives you a high degree of privacy. And of course, when you have ZK rollups, then you have other advantages, right? Where you can do sort of, let's say, settlement on layer one, and you can have a very high degree of security. But also by being stateless, right? You can solve other problems of state bloat, and where a stateless client just requires needs to have the block headers, and as long as there is perfect data availability, you can always source the transactions within those blocks and ensure that every block is correct, right? You don't necessarily need to source that from a validator. You can source it from any node nearby to you, which makes it extremely fast and scalable, right? So the more the number of nodes, you don't necessarily need to increase the number of validators. You need to, as long as you have a large number of nodes, also you can solve this problem. So just to get a bit technical there. So this is kind of, we started so working backwards from this maybe perfect future. We kind of started making those steps, that what is it that we need to do now. Of course, like, we were obviously always in favor of trying to maybe building this organically. But to build this organically, what do you need to do, right? You need to hire the right teams. You need to have a research division. And when we looked out there at who was doing this really really well, we kind of found Hermes as a team to have much the same philosophy as us, having done amazing work on ZK technologies. In fact, one of the founders of Hermes is, you could say, the progenitor of ZK rollups as a concept. And talking to this team, we kind of realized that if we were to like combine our forces, right, and work together towards this goal of EVM, like ZK, which is EVM enabled and has, like, the future of being maybe stateless and things like that, you can achieve true scalability. Which is why that while it is an acquisition, we still call it a merger, right? Because
Mm.
for us, like, as a from a philosophy perspective, both the teams are trying to achieve the same goals. We have actually combined forces, right? Versus, so this is kind of why we still call it a merger. Like, a lot of people ask us, like, technically it's an acquisition, why? Like, but like, from a pure philosophy of how we operate, like, this is a merger for us because both of us are chasing the same goal.
Mm.
And which is why it's very exciting for us. I think also, just as a quick tidbit, if I were to say that, we put together about $1 billion
Mm.
for building out ZK technology. Now the merger with Hermes was about 250 million, right? So there's a whole lot left, and there's a big story which we are going to talk about in the weeks to come. Like, so we've already talked about some of the building blocks. Like, we've talked about Polygon Avail, which is that
Mm.
data availability layer, which I was telling you about, right? Which is when you look at the future best case and you work backwards. What are all the parts you need? So you need a ZK, EVM based ZK solution, but you also need like a data availability layer where you can start working towards like stateless clients. So all these different parts, we are slowly like Legos putting them together, and the full vision will be out very soon, in let's say maybe a couple of months from now.
Hmm.
So a lot of excitement